So let's just jump right into our discussion for this week, which is, or our topic for today, I should say, which is CSS. So we got a little bit into CSS last week. You know, we created a style sheet when we were creating our first web page in Dreamweaver, and we started to add a couple of styles in. But good morning, Dallas. I just saw that you were able to pop in. That's great. So CSS is a style sheet language that basically describes the presentation of an HTML document. So the CSS describes how elements must be rendered on the screen, you know, for our website. So if we have HTML, which states that there is a body element, we can use the CSS to tell the body background color to be a specific color. Or if we have an H1 headline, we can create CSS to change the color to orange and to center the text. And if we have paragraph text with our P element, we can change the font family and change the font size of that paragraph text. So CSS actually stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And this is because of how the text basically cascades down the sheet. You know, the setup of the text, the way it looks. It kind of looks like a little bit of a cascading waterfall, I guess. Somebody came up with that name. I just go with that. That kind of cascades down the page when I look at it. CSS describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on the screen. CSS saves you a lot of work. I know it may not seem like it right away, but it actually does, because it can control the layout of multiple web pages all at once. And then the external style sheets are stored inside of that CSS file that you save. So why do we use CSS? CSS is used to define styles for your web page, including the design, the layout, and variations in the display for different devices and different screen sizes. And the reason why we put all of that information into the CSS rather than into the HTML is it allows our web pages to actually load faster, which, as we know, with a ton of mobile devices and not as fast internet speeds everywhere, it's good to have a web page that loads quickly. So CSS solved a big problem, and that's basically what I was just discussing, which is HTML was never intended to contain tags for formatting a web page. HTML was created to describe the content of a web page like this, which is, H1, this is a heading, P, this is a paragraph. So when tags like font and color attributes were added to the HTML in 3.2, it started a nightmare for web developers. And it really was a nightmare. I was doing some HTML back then, not a ton, but your code was just so inundated with tags everywhere, and everything just loaded really, really slowly. So development of large websites where fonts and color information were added to every single page was a very, very long and expensive process. So in order to solve this problem, the W3C created CSS. So CSS removed the formatting from the HTML pages and put it all on that CSS page. So CSS saves you a lot of work. Like I said, when you first get going with it, it may not seem like it's saving you a ton of time, but you may do almost all of the CSS specifications, let's say, on your home page of your 4-page website. And then what you can do is just attach that CSS file to all of your subsequent pages, and boom, the formatting of all of those pages is done, as long as you have similar tags on those pages. So that's how having that style sheet can really change the look of your entire website with creating just one file. And that's something that I definitely want to keep stating, when you create your final website for this course, yes, exactly. That is a great way to put it. Okay, kind of like when you are in, let's say, InDesign, and you create paragraph styles, or you create character styles, and then you can just attach those paragraph and character styles throughout your entire document. It's so much easier to do that and be able to change everything all at once and, you know, format everything than to go page by page by page and, you know, have to manually do this. Exactly. Work smarter, not harder. That's exactly it. And that's what we do in design, and it's what we do in web design too. So what I will say is, when you are creating your 4-page website, you only need one CSS file across that entire site. You don't need to make a new CSS file for every single HTML page. You only have the one file. So that is the way that we will be working today. We're going to keep adding CSS to that file we've already created. So this is the CSS syntax. So and I'm not going to lie, I still sometimes need to refer back to this little graphic right here, you know, to remember to call, you know, this piece the selector and then this piece the declaration. I know that this is the value, but I always forget what the different pieces are called. But basically, the selector points to the HTML element that you want to style. So if you have a main area in your website and you have named that main, because remember when we were discussing the box model, and you could name your main section either main or you could name it section. Your selector needs to match whatever that HTML name is. So if I want to make, let me type this out for you, it might be easier. Because in our example, we were using main. So our box model looked like, you know, we had a div, then we had our header, then inside of our header, we had our nav, then we had our aside section, and we had our main section, and we had our footer. And then this div was our wrapper. So if I want to create a selector for this main area, even though a main area can be called either a main or a section, when I create my selector needs to be based off of whatever my HTML is. So I would need to type main, add my selector, and say, you know, color blue. It would actually be background color. Color blue, and width would be, let's say, I don't know, 65% or something like that. And that is how I would need to write out my my CSS. However, I'm just gonna kind of break that up. However, if my main section was actually called section, then my selector would also need to be called section. So this is something I just want to make sure that I'm clear on, because I know a lot of times people will follow along with me and they will make a selector and they'll call it main, but the HTML file that they are working in has that area named section. So this these rules that you've created and these values that you've created, they're not going to change that area because the two names don't match. So you always got to make sure that everything is, you know, matches. It's the same thing when we get into IDs and classes. You know, I named my div wrapper. So if I want to go in and make a selector, and let's say I spell wrapper wrong, I miss a P, it's not going to match. Everything needs to match exactly. So again, the selector, which is your element tag, points to the HTML element that you want to style. But can't this all be done in the sidebar? Yes, no, that's a good question. Everything is going to be done in the sidebar in that DOM panel. And in the CSS panel, but you are still going to have to actually type things in, when you're creating those selectors. So that's where you just got to be careful that you don't spell things wrong or use the wrong name and that things don't match. So that's why I just wanted to kind of point that out, because a lot of people will send me an email and they're like, I don't get it. I've added in my selector and, I've added in the rules and the values and nothing seems to be working. Like, what is it? And a lot of times I say to them, well, maybe it's the order you have your CSS in because that matters. And they're like, nope, I move things around. Oh, all right, maybe it's this. And a lot of times when I'm troubleshooting, I'll say to them, I'm like, oh, no, what it is you spelt wrapper by accident with like an A or something. And they're like, oh, and then all of a sudden it works. So I always tell people, I'm like, and I've done it myself. That's why I know. A lot of times I say, have you checked this? Because I always make this mistake. So a lot of the things that I might harp on are because I do this and I know how easy it is to do it. So, you might be like, why does she keep telling us this? And it's like, because too many times I've done that. And if I can spare you, some of the errors that I have made, I always will try. So, again, that's just making sure that those selectors match the HTML element. Next, what you have is your declaration block. So this contains one or more declarations, and those are separated by the semicolons. So this is a declaration, or a decoration if you can't think of the name, because it's really decorating your page, I guess. Background color blue, and then I have a semicolon to separate that. Then my second declaration would be with 65%, and then I have a semicolon that is separating that. So those are two different declarations on one selector, my wrapper selector. Each declaration includes a CSS property and a value, and then those values and properties are separated by the colon or the semicolon. Oh, the colon right here. So a CSS declaration always needs to end with a semicolon as well. That's how it knows that you're done basically writing your code. And then those are surrounded by these curly brackets that we put in. And then it cascades all the way down your page. So you won't really need to type up a lot of code this way because Dreamweaver does it for you. There is a space. You can either put a space or you can manually hit enter. It's kind of how you want to format it. I like to hit enter and put all of my declarations on a separate line. I just find that it's a little bit easier to do that, where I can kind of then go in and see line by line if I'm looking for something specific rather than reading, what looks like paragraphs worth of code. It's just easier for me to separate it out that way visually for my eyes. So it's really up to you. But yes, there should be a space or at least a return. But again, Dreamweaver is going to set up that code for you. And we'll take a look at that when we start to add in some code. So in the following example, all of the P or paragraph elements will be center aligned with a red text color. So we have our element or our selector, which is the P element. So that will target all of the paragraph text on our page. Next, we have our curly brackets. And when I'm typing it out, what I like to do is I actually let me just copy this to this page. I like to start by typing it this way. So I add in my selector and I do my first curly bracket and I hit enter twice and I do my second curly bracket so I don't forget to close it. It's just one of the things that I used to forget to do was to close out my tags. The same thing with my HTML. If I am typing out an H1 tag, I immediately close out my tag, just so that way I don't forget to close out my tag, because it's just one of those things that I forget to do from time to time. So I want all of my text color to be red. So that will be my property will be color. Whoops. And my value will be red with a semicolon. And then I want my text to be aligned, so text aligned, center. And you can put a space in between the actual colon and the value if you want, or you don't have to. And then you would do another semicolon to end that. And then again, I've ended my my CSS right here with the bracket, my CSS selector. Is it dangerous to copy and paste and just change what needs to be changed? No, not at all. And no, you're not doing this in your file right now. A lot of times what I do as far as copying and pasting goes is I will use TextEdit on my Mac. And if I know that something, like 99% of my page is working, but there happens to be like one thing that's not working, that's screwing everything up and I can't figure it out yet, what I will do is I will actually take all of my code from CodeView and I will copy and paste it into TextEdit and save it. I'll just save it as like, this is the part that happens to be working. Like I give it random file names, but that way what I can do is I can kind of delete things, move things around, and then, if I figure out what the error is, let's say I deleted something thinking that's the error. Okay, it wasn't. Well, I can copy and paste it back in from my TextEdit. I know that wasn't the problem, and I can work my way down through the code and troubleshoot. So copying and pasting really is a good way to kind of fix things and do changes, especially if you know that, maybe you're not only do you want your paragraph text to be red and center aligned, but maybe you want your headline to be center aligned and have the color red. So you could just copy and paste, this line of code and and do another line right underneath it and just change the P to an H1. So you already have like your format set up. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways that you can use copy and paste. So again, CSS selectors, which are used to find or select the HTML elements based on their element name, their ID, their class, their attribute, or more. So this is why we're going to get into those IDs and classes later, after I finish going over this. All right, so in this class, we will be using external style sheets, try to say that 3 times fast, to add CSS to our web page. So with an external style sheet, you can change the look of your entire website by just changing that one file. And each page must include a reference to the style sheet inside of a link element, which would go in your head section. Again, lucky for you, Dreamweaver takes care of this for you, and you can just manually click a button to add that CSS page or CSS style sheet to your web page, and it will add in the code for you, which would look a little bit something like this. So link is a style sheet, the type of link is text CSS, and then the actual link is, my style or whatever it's called, .css, and it adds in that code for you. All right. You guys should probably at this point be familiar with the DOM panel that we're using in Dreamweaver because we went over that last week. So DOM actually stands for the document object model, which acts as a roadmap for the browser to identify different parts of the page. So the DOM panel might seem a little bit overwhelming at first, but it's a really powerful tool for examining and controlling the structure of our website. So this is what the DOM panel basically used to look like when people drew it out. You know, it's kind of like this. I think that the Dreamweaver version is a little bit more streamlined, and actually this is a screenshot from CC 2015, which it looks a little bit different in CC 2017 now. We have much more of a gray look going on, but the panel actually still functions the same. All right. Before we get into the assignment for week 2, I just want to go over and talk about the classes and the IDs, just so that way I can kind of get all of the slides out of the way, and then we'll get into the actual assignment portion and getting back into Dreamweaver. So, IDs and classes, otherwise known as hashtags and periods. We need a way to describe content in our HTML or XHTML document. And the basic elements such as, you know, the H1 headline element, the P for paragraph, and the UL for unordered list, a lot of times they will do the job. But our basic set of tags doesn't cover every possible type of page element or layout choice. So for this, we need IDs and classes. For example, when we were creating our navigation, we used an unordered list, which was a bulleted list. But at some point, we're going to want to take those bulleted items off, or the bullet points off, and reformat our navigation on our page to look more like navigation. But we might want to only target that specific navigation unordered list. We might not want to take the bullet points off and move things around in a similar manner other bulleted lists that might be on our page. So in order to do this, we could give that specific unordered list an ID called nav. The same thing might go for, you know, naming our footer, and naming maybe some sidebar text, you know, sidebar box. So we give things specific names so that way we can specifically target just those areas of our page in the CSS. So IDs and classes, those are hooks, and, you know, in quotes, that we need to build into our markup to get our hands on them. So CSS obviously needs these, so we may build selectors and do our styling, but other web languages actually depend on them as well, such as JavaScript. Not that we're really going to get into that in this class. But what is the difference between an ID and a class? And this is where, you know, it might have gotten a little confusing. IDs are unique. Each element can only have one ID, and then each page can only have one element with that specific ID. So your code would not pass validation if you use the same ID on more than one element. So let's say that I have a div in my website, in my HTML code, and I've given it the ID of wrapper. But let's say that I wanted to make another div inside of that div, because you know how we can have multiple divs on our HTML page? I couldn't name that second div with the ID of wrapper because it would throw an error in my code. So that's the biggest part about IDs, is that each element can have only one ID, and that element, one named ID, can only be on one page. So there can only be one div wrapper per page. You know, you can't have two or three. So classes, however, and those are the ones where you use a period, those are not unique. You can use the same class You could go 1, 2, 3 after. You could do that because it technically has a different name. So that is something that you could do. Yep. As long, because, the code doesn't care that you have named it wrapper. It's just looking, that the name is wrapper. It's not saying that to itself. All it's looking at is that is named WRAPPER. It just looks at it as each letter is its own element. So if you added a 1 at the end, it looks at it like it's two completely different things, that they're not even related. It's not like us, where we might be like, oh wait, I meant wrapper 2, not wrapper 1. So yeah, I mean, if that would help you to keep like items similarly named, I say definitely go that way. So the thing with classes, though, is those are not unique. So you can use the same class on multiple elements, and then you can use multiple classes on the same element. So any styling information that needs to be applied to multiple objects on a page should be done with a class. All right, so if you have multiple, let's say, widgets on your page, you can name them all with the class widgets, so that way your CSS for widget would style them all exactly the same. The same could be said for maybe your H1 head, or maybe you had H3 headlines and you wanted to name all of the H3 headlines on 2 of your 4 paragraphs. Let me think, big headline, and you styled them a little bit different than the other 2 H2 headlines, which you had named little headline. Maybe the font was a little bit different or something. So that was just a way of, I know it's a little bit difficult until you see it. This will make more sense when we get into the code, into coding. But just remember, IDs are hashtags. You can only have one of them per page. So one ID with that name per page. Classes use the period when you're typing it in, and you can use as many as you want on a page and multiple of the same element. And again, I will be sharing the slides from today, so if it's a little bit confusing and you need to refer back afterwards, the slides will be available after the live session. So again, what if you need one of them to be bigger than the other, one of your widgets, let's say, but still share all the other attributes? Classes has you covered there, as you can apply more than one class. So you don't need to make a brand new class name. You can just apply a new class right in the class attribute. So you have widget space big, widget. So these classes are space delimited, and most browsers support any number of them. Actually, like thousands, but you probably will never need that. And this is a little bit more advanced and stuff that we will be doing, but I think it's really good information for you to know. So there are no browser defaults for any ID or class. So adding a class name or an ID to an element does nothing to that element by default. This is something that, definitely got me as a beginner. You are working on one site and figure out that applying a particular class name fixes a problem that you're having, such as just naming that unordered list navigation. That turns it into navigation, right? And then you jump over to another site with the same problem and you try to fix it by, renaming the same class, and it doesn't work. The name for the class doesn't actually have any magical properties to it. You actually have to target those specific classes and IDs by adding CSS styling. So if you are working in one website and you have styled your navigation correctly and you named your selector nav, and that fixed it on your page because they matched up, and then let's say you went to your next website and you just named your unordered list nav, and you waited for all of those things to magically look the same, it wouldn't, because you actually have to apply the CSS styles that you had done to that selector. So, it still all needs to match up. The classes are just any other name. All right, so classes and IDs in Dreamweaver. To add a class in Dreamweaver, you use a dot. So it would be, like dot wrapper would name the div wrapper with a class. But to add an ID is when you use the hashtag. So we use the hashtag on purpose because really that is our main div for our entire web page. So it really should be named with an ID. Why? I don't know. It's just the way it's always been done. Somebody decided that long before me, and they were probably a lot smarter than me, so I go along with them. So, dots versus hashtags, basically, easiest way to remember it. And this is what it will look like in your code in Dreamweaver. All right. Back to this slideshow. So I'm hoping we've got about 20 minutes before we're going to take our break. So what I think we should do in these 20 minutes is discuss our assignment for this week, which is our website mockup. So the mockup needs to be a minimum of 4 pages, and it should follow along for each of the pages that you have created in your sitemap and that you discussed in your concept and put together in your wireframe. So everything matches up each week, as you can see. So the 4 pages should be a home page, an about page, a product or services page, and then an optional detail page of your product and services if your concept required it. And then a contact page that would include the following: your company name, your company address, and a company phone number. And then leave a spot. You don't need to make the form look exactly what the form should look like in Photoshop, but definitely block it out so I can visually see where you plan on putting your form on your page, and then also your privacy policy. So I'm going to open up Photoshop real quick, and I'm also going to open up, I do not want to do this right now. There we go. All right. I'm also going to open up a PSD file for a website mockup that I had created. Normally, when I teach this course, I create a website and I go over all of the, different things that are going to go in the website. I go over the HTML and I add in the CSS, and there's enough similarities to what I'm doing that should be able to help you with the midterm and with the creating your own site. But I'm trying to do things a little bit different this time by using these practice files and having you guys work along with me. So, it obviously takes a little bit longer when we're using the practice files. So some of the things such as, sitting here for an hour and creating, a mock-up in Photoshop with you, I don't feel like that's really a good use of my time when we could really be getting into Dreamweaver and trying to work through together some of the issues that people might have, coding for the first time. So my demo of the website mockup is going to be a little bit quicker than it normally is. So I figured what I would do is just open up the one that I have already created. So this is usually the website that I create when I am teaching this course. And at the end, you will see a functioning website that looks very similar to my mock-up that I have here. Which if I go in and look at my wireframe for week 1, you can see how it follows along with my wireframe. So let me open that up. Each part of the process, there's a reason for it, why we do it. There we go. So let me go down to my wireframe. All right. So here is my wireframe for my homepage. So as you can see, I have my logo up at the top, which is right here. I have my navigation, home, about, dining, and contact, which I've also added in. Next, I have my hero image, so my big image that I want to add into the top part of my web page. And here's that image right there. Next, what I had was a couple of lines of hero text. No, Casey, you don't need to do the mock-up. I'm honestly the only things that you're going to be working along with me are going to be in Dreamweaver using those practice files. The assignment you can create on your own. Yeah, no problem. So next what I have is my hero text, my couple of lines of hero text. And then I had one, and then I had where basically I thought the fold of my web page might be. Then I had a main image with some main content, and I had my sidebar or my aside text. So if we look, I've got my main image right there with a headline and some main content, and then I had my sidebar section and my footer with my social media icons. So, it pretty much follows the thinking behind my wireframe, how I set up my page. So the way I got started is I know that I want my page, my wrapper, my div, this is my div wrapper right here. Everything behind this or in front of this white background is my div wrapper as far as, the code, the actual code on my site. So I wanted this to be centered within the body of my page. So you can see that my my body section has this really subtle background that I've added in, and it's going to just be tiled throughout my entire site. But I wanted my div wrapper area to have a white background. So that way I thought it would be easier to read my text and to, see my pictures on top of everything else. So, and I also wanted this section to float and always stay in the middle of my page. So the reason I'm telling you this is my div wrapper is going to be about 1,000 pixels wide, but I wanted to show what the whole web page would look like in the browser. So to do this, I ended up, hold on, image canvas size. I ended up setting up a canvas size of 1,600 pixels by 1,600 pixels. And that just showed I can put my wrapper area, which is 1,000 pixels wide, right in the middle, and I've got about 300 pixels on either side to show the the body in my background. And I do apologize if anybody has any questions, because for some reason I got disconnected on my iPad, so I'm waiting for myself to come back. It just keeps saying I'm connecting. So hopefully I still have you guys. I don't know if my iPad's been acting a little bit weird this week. So hopefully it's still working. I think I have to rejoin the meeting. That's a bummer. Hold on one second while I just do that. Hopefully it's only on my iPad and it's not affecting you guys as well. Let's see. At least I'm still recording, so that's good. It's the little things. All right, well, while that's waiting, I can't see anything in the chat, so I'll assume you guys are still here. I'm hoping you're still here. Oh, I got a... Okay, all right. Well, Casey's still here, so that's good. All right, I'll just go back into Photoshop and we'll just carry on. So I apologize for the distraction. I was kind of watching it out of my left eye going, what's going on over there? So I set up my my first page as 1,600 pixels by 1,600 pixels for that reason, because I really began to think through the size of my website. And where I got the 1,000 pixels from is, that's kind of a standard width that somebody would probably read one line of text before it should be broken out into 2 columns. So that's where that really comes from. So what I have done is I have, basically built this from, from the background up. I'm going to just take out all of the layers right now. The first thing that I did is I copied and pasted my wireframe right out of Photoshop, or right out of InDesign where I created it, into Photoshop. And I then had a template that I could follow along with. Obviously, my wireframe is not as long as I want my webpage to be, and that might happen to you as well. So you might need to, just extend things down, and you can change the size also of, your canvas in Photoshop when you start putting this together. If you realize, you need a little bit more length on your page, definitely go in, into your canvas size, and you can adjust it. I would just anchor what you're working on in the top center, so that way it just adds the length at the bottom, and it doesn't add it and put some white space at the top and white space at the bottom. That would probably be a little bit more of a disaster, because then you'd be having to shift everything up, and everything else, which obviously is, not good. And I just started to build everything on top of my wireframe. So I like to start at the top. So the first thing that I did was add my logo where I knew I wanted my logo to go. And then next I decided on a font. And the good thing about Dreamweaver is that you can add in web fonts, which right through Adobe Typekit. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. No. Where's my character? There we go. So let me go into my navigation. So the font that I chose was Source Sans Pro, which you can see when you're in Photoshop. You can add fonts from Typekit and just click on this little TK icon. And what that will do was it will bring you into Adobe Typekit. It will actually open up in your browser. It won't run through Photoshop, but it does run through Photoshop. It does run through the program in Dreamweaver. So again, one of those things where the user interface across Adobe doesn't match, and I really wish it did. It's actually a lot easier to add in the fonts, I find, in Dreamweaver than it is to add them in Photoshop. But what are you gonna do? So you can look through and you can change, look for just sans serif fonts. You can look for just serif fonts, slab serif. You can really basically look for any type of font that you want, and they have a huge selection, I'm not going to lie, of fonts that you can pick from. So this is really great because whatever you pick in here it will be added right into Photoshop when you get in there. And I think I might be back in. Possibly. Let's see. I'm connecting. I've been trying to do both things at the same time. Yeah. All right. And I'm back up on my iPad. I only had to restart everything to get it going again, but that's fine. So it'll show up in Photoshop once you load those fonts. And I'm not going to lie, it kind of takes a minute for it to show up. It will, because basically it needs to download the font. It needs to link to your account. There's like a whole bunch of stuff that has to go on in the background in order for it to work. But then you will know that the fonts that you are choosing for your website are web safe, because you have to make sure that you're using web safe fonts. So this is one of the things that when you are creating this mockup, you just really need to be aware of the fonts that you are choosing, because every font that you might have on your machine is not necessarily a web safe font, and you won't be able to use it when you get into Dreamweaver. All right, so I will try to figure out, what I want my navigation to look like, and I'll add that into the page, so that's where that goes. I would probably at this time also add in that section that's going to be my body, which I wanted to be about 1,000 pixels wide, so I measured that out and added it in. And then where I gotten this background from is actually that website, subtlepatterns.com. And I'll share that website with you in the announcement for the useful links. You might have seen that I had started that announcement. I like to put all of the different useful links that I find in there, and this is definitely one of them. So I'm just double checking the chat. It bumped me off again, so now I have to make sure that I go in and check the chat manually, which is kind of a pain on this. All right, so, okay, everybody was just saying that they were still here, so that's good. It's only me that keeps getting bumped out. I think there's a problem with Zoom on the iPad today. It keeps saying that it can't connect to the Zoom something. So you can choose one of these patterns if you would like for your background, and that's where I got that background that's in our practice file. So each of these is already set up to pattern in Photoshop or to pattern in Dreamweaver and on your website. So what you would do is download that file, and it's a PNG file. I believe the one I have right now that I downloaded last, yep, that's it. All right, I'll open up in Photoshop. And zoom in a little. You can kind of see the pattern. So in order to use this as a pattern in Photoshop, you don't really need to worry about this when you're in Dreamweaver. But if you wanted to, set this up in Photoshop so it's going to look exactly like your website when you create it in Dreamweaver, which is what this mock-up's supposed to do, what you would do is you would open up that pattern in Photoshop, and you would go up into Edit, Define Pattern. And, it's probably going to put the file name in as the pattern name. If that's all right with you, you can just leave it and hit OK. And then when you are in your document, on your background layer, all you have to do is Edit, Fill, and pick Pattern, and then just kind of navigate to that pattern that you added in. So I'm just going to show you what it would look like with that new one I just added. And you would hit OK. So see how it patterns it seamlessly throughout your page, so that it kind of mimics what it will look like when you bring the pattern into Dreamweaver and add it as the background. So the next thing I would probably do after I added in my navigation and I added in where my body's going to go and my logo is I would probably make a new layer and put in this hero image. So added that right here. And at this point, I'm kind of out overrunning where my wireframe is. So I might choose to, turn my wireframe off at this point. It's kind of not matching up as well at this stage of the game. And I would I would always keep referencing it though. I would make sure that I keep it open, possibly, keep the PDF open or what have you, or keep it open in InDesign or Illustrator if that's where I created it. And then I would add in my section that had my hero text. I had a little divider bar I wanted to add in, so I would add that. And you can see how I've made everything is its own layer. And that's just because if I need to move something, it's so much easier to just move the layer than to try to take an item out of, a one layer document. I'm sure you guys know that. It's just a lot easier to do it this way. Next, what I would do is add in my image that's going to go into my main section. And I kind of started to also grid out my Photoshop document. So I gridded out where my body section was going to go, my wrapper was going to go. I've gridded out, the size of my main section and my sidebar section. I've given myself a little bit of, padding here on either side, so my text doesn't run right up into the white bar, because that would be hard for people to read. So I would probably add in, the text for my headline and my main content area, and then the text for my sidebar. And then last but not least is I would start to put in my footer area, which my footer is going to be a black bar down at the bottom. And I would put in, my copyright information that I wanted to add, and then my social media icons. So this is how I personally tend to set up my my mock-up. If you have your actual text at this point, definitely add it to your mock-up. And honestly, you're only helping yourself to start actually writing your content at this stage. But if you do not happen to have your actual text, then I would use just lorem ipsum text or something of that nature. The size, you can make the size of the artboard any size, Casey. I was just saying that I made mine 1600 by 1600 because I wanted my wrapper area to be 1000 pixels wide, and I wanted to be able to show on both sides that my body was going to have a different background. So it's really your choice, but I think 1600 pixels by 1600 pixels is a good start for you to put yours together. But you do not have to, you're not stuck to that size. Well, like I was saying, you know how I keep saying about 1000 pixels for the width of my wrapper section? That's because, that's kind of a standard that you would probably make your wrapper is 1000 pixels. So I would start there. Anything wider, your text is going to be running really far. And, it's hard for people, on people's eyes to read kind of past, I think it's 2 alphabets, and that roughly fits 2 alphabets worth of text. So that's where that measurement comes from. Do we have any more questions on the mock-up? Again, you have to do a mock-up for each and every page. So you can choose to, set up artboards, like 4 separate artboards, if that's the way that you like to work in Photoshop. Personally, I like to make 4 separate documents. It's just me. That's just how I like to do things. And then you do need to submit. Let's look at the assignment real quick. You do need to submit, I believe it is a one-page PDF. I just want to double check on that. According to the assignment, you can use Illustrator, but really the best program for doing this is Photoshop with the PSD files. But if you want to do it in Illustrator, you can. But most people do mock-ups in Photoshop. Like if you get a job and you're doing this and you need to do mock-ups, you will most likely be asked to do your mock-ups in Photoshop. So I am just giving you a heads up on that. So again, you need to submit one multi-page PDF and make sure it is named appropriately. So if you have created 4 documents, let's say, in Photoshop, there's a couple of different ways that you can make that multi-page PDF. You can just save them all as a PSD file, open up InDesign, and make a 4-page document with the same exact dimensions and place them as an image and export a PDF. That might be the easiest way to do it. Or you can do a file, save as PSD, and then file, save as PDF. And then in Acrobat, combine them all like we did last week and make a multi-page PDF. So it's really up to you how you want to make that multi-page PDF. But again, you do need to have a mock-up for every single page of your website. And my suggestion to you would be, after you make your homepage, don't rewrite the wheel from page to page, you know? It's going to be easier for you coding-wise if they follow a similar layout. So you want to think ahead to week 3 when you need to code this entire website. I'm not trying to curtail you from being creative, but if you've never coded before and this is your first time doing this, you know, definitely think of that when you are creating your mock-up for your web page. So maybe your home, your about, and your dining page, they follow a similar format, just the content changes within the wrapper section. You know, the images change and the text changes, but it follows a similar format. The only page that should really look different is your contact page, because you need to have a form. So that's definitely, you know, and you can just block out with squares where that form will go, and you can say, like, my form will go here. It's going to be, you know, a form that I create in Dreamweaver. And then you can use your text to put in the information, such as, you know, the company name, the company address, and the company phone number. Maybe that goes into your sidebar section right here. So on your contact page, make sure you put in that information, not just this aside section dummy text, basically. So does anybody else have any questions before we go into our break? On our mockup, can we use layer comps? I'm not sure what you mean by that. In Photoshop, layer comps and different artboards. Oh, yes. Yes, you can use different artboards. That's what I was saying before. Yes. If you want to use different artboards within for the same document, yes, you can do that. Basically, I don't need to see your Photoshop file. I just need to see your one-page PDF that shows all 4 pages. Your multi-page PDF, not your one page. Sorry, your multi-page PDF. That's definitely what I need to see. So as long as it comes through as a multi-page PDF, that is fine. I think I have an example. So here we go. So mine would look, you know, basically each page, even though it's all of the same pages. Oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You know, I feel like you guys learned to use artboards when I first learned Photoshop. Artboards didn't exist. So I've just kind of gotten into the habit. I do teach artboards from time to time, but I've just gotten into the habit over the years that I use multi-page documents. You know, it's kind of, that's why I'm always okay if people use you know, multi-page documents, or if they use artboards. I know that a lot of ways that people are taught now is using artboards, so that's completely fine. Just like I said, you know, it would just be as long as you have your multi-page PDF, you are good. All right, so why don't we take let's take a 10-minute break, and I know normally it would take 5, but I'm going to try to see if I can't get this my iPad up and running, and we can get back in, and we'll get into Dreamweaver. So why don't we, it's about 107 or 108, why don't we come back at 1:18 my time, and I will see everybody in 10 minutes. Okay, I hope everybody is back. Let me just resume sharing my screen. There we go. I think the problem is just with me. I'm semi-running the chat off of my phone, so I'm just going to send out a test. All right, it showed up. So we'll see. We'll see if it gives me any more trouble today. Zoom. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it just plays along nice for the rest of the class. Wouldn't that be great? Now, is everybody back? Ian, can you still hear me okay? All right, great. Well, I know Casey can hear me. So if Casey can hear me, I'm sure everybody can hear me. And I just had to throw a lozenge in my mouth. I have a very sore throat. So I apologize for that as well. Whew, only one more of these live sessions to go today. Okay, so does everybody have their practice files ready to go and ready to get into Dreamweaver? Okay, Casey, why did you not download them, or are you not going to work along? Okay, all right, okay. And Dallas is going to watch on the tablet. Okay. All right. So is anybody going to be working along today? Because that's kind of the point of the practice files. Oh, okay, Casey is. Okay. All right, that's good. So, Casey, did you, I'm trying to remember, were you here last week to work along with week 1, or did you just download just the files for week 2? Oh, okay. All right. So all you need to do when you get into Dreamweaver then is under Files, you should be able to open up your week 1 site and see your index.html file in there. So all you need to do is double click on index.html, and that should open up your site that we started creating last week. So let me know when you've got that open. You can just tell me in the chat. For everybody else who might be working along from home today, what you will need to do is the first thing that you need to do whenever you start a new site that you have not done, that you have not been working on before, is you need to create a new site. So for everybody else, what you will do is you will go to Site, New Site. You will name your site. So I'm just going to name this another one as though it was week 2. So I'm going to just name it week 2. And then what you're going to do is you're going to browse for the folder that you downloaded. This isn't for you, Casey. You're all good to go. So I put my week 2 folder in here, week 2 practice file. So I'm going to just navigate to that week 2 practice files. You need to open up the zip file and just select just that week 2 practice files folder. Click choose. Under advanced settings, click local info. Browse for default images. So you're going to click that little browse, that little folder icon, and then select images and click choose and click save. So you will then have an images folder, your index.html, a week 1 CSS, and a week 1 text folder in there. And you can just open up that file. So I'll work out of this week 2 folder because it doesn't really matter either way. All right, so when you open up that folder or open up that file, you will see that in the DOM panel, we have created a div wrapper. We've created a header. Inside of that header, we have an image that has a link. We have a headline. We have our navigation, which is an unordered list. We have a main area of our website. We have an aside area, which will be our sidebar. And then we have our footer, which just has a copyright. And everyone last week had changed the copyright to say their name. I think it said like your name here or something. So that will be the one thing that you will need to change. And if you aren't quite sure how to do that, reference back to the week 1 live session where we had done that. All right, so remember how we were talking about classes and IDs about 20 minutes ago before we took our break and I tried to solve my problems. Solve my problems that never get solved. So our div wrapper is named with a hashtag. So is that an ID or is that a class? Now look to the chats to see if who gets it first. So if I name something with a hashtag, is it an ID or is it a class? Who wants to take a guess? Class is wrong. Class would be if I had named it with a period, but because I named it with a hashtag, it's an ID. So there's a couple of other things in my DOM that I want to start naming with, all right. What looks different on yours, Kay? Okay, sorry. I'm trying to read everybody's names from the chat, like from my cell phone that I have halfway across my desk, so I apologize. What looks different on your HTML? The body in div is in the wrong places. So your div should be within your body. Is this from last week? Yes, okay. What you might need to do is, why don't you quickly download the week 2 file and set that up, and that should be fixed for you, because it's going to be difficult where I can't see your screen for you to do that. And then while you're doing that, I'll just start discussing with everybody else what I'm going to name. So remember, when you download that file, you're going to, I think the easiest thing for you to do, download the week 2 practice file, open up the zip file, and copy the index.html into your folder from week 1 and just overwrite that index.html that's already in there. Just make sure you have it closed out of Dreamweaver before you do that. And then all you need to do is copy and paste the images folder into your week 1 folder as well. So basically it'll override those 2 older items. And you should be fine to just open up the file again in Dreamweaver. So just let me know after you do that. All right. So for everybody else, we're going to start naming, giving some classes and some IDs to different sections of our website. So for the header, there's really only one header that's going to be on your page. So it's okay to name your header with an with an ID. So I'm going to name my header hashtag header right there. And I'm going to name my headline that is within my header with a class, however, because it's kind of text and, you know, I just don't want to have too many IDs. Like, you know, I want like kind of like, you know, some IDs and some classes basically in my page. So I am going to name my H1 headline with the class of head text. So if I'm naming it with the class, do I use a period or do I use a hashtag? And while you guys decide on that, I'm just going to mute myself real quick so I can blow my nose. Dallas says a period, and he is correct. So I'm going to name my H1 headline inside of my header dot head text. Now, if I wanted to name my navigation with an ID, would I use a hashtag or a period? Hashtag, that's right. Kay's got it this time. So I'm just going to name my nav, hashtag nav. Pretty simple, you know. And you can see that the naming convention, it really makes sense. You know, this is my header, so I'm going to name it with an ID of header. This is the text that's in my header section. Oh, okay, Case is back. So what you're going to do, all right, watch me for 1 second. Unzip the week 2 practice files, zip, that you just downloaded, and open up the folder. Now, you should open up 2 different browser windows, so they're side by side, and close out of your index.html in Dreamweaver. So close out of this completely. And let me know when you do that. You have to double click to unzip it. So once you have it unzipped, do you have two Finder windows side by side like I do on my screen? Okay, to make a new Finder window, you would hit the Command and then N, or you can do File, New Finder window. So you have 2 of them side by side. All right, once you have that, what you want to do, open up the folder from your week 1 live session, and it should have in there images, index. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. It should have images, index, week 1 CSS, and then week 1 text should be in that folder for your week 1 site. Okay. Drag index and drag images over into this folder and just drop. And it's going to ask you, do you want to copy over those files? It should ask you something like that. And just hit yes. So let me know when you've done that. Okay. Now go back into Dreamweaver. Up under Files, just double click index.html and it should be that new file. And it should look pretty much like what mine looks like on my page. on my screen. And let me know when you open it up in Dreamweaver. What do you, all right, you got to copy and paste the images in the index into your week 1 site. Then you need to go back into Dreamweaver, the program, and you need to go under Files and open up index.html again. Oh, okay, you got it. All right, great. All right, so what we did while you were downloading that was open up, it probably looks like this on your screen, open up your body and open up your div and open up header. And you're going to name header hashtag header. Whoops, make sure you spell it correctly. Then you're going to name the H1 period head text, and you're going to name the nav, whoops, hashtag nav. So you just double click to name those areas with the IDs and the classes. So I'm going to type that in the chat for you. Hold on 1 second. So your header is equal to hashtag header. Your H1 is equal to head text with a period. And your nav is equal to hashtag nav. And that's as far as we've gotten. So you can name those three elements with those, the IDs, 2 of them are IDs, and the one with the period is a class. Okay. So that has taken care of naming our header section. So why did all right, just remembering back from what we were, while Casey's typing those in, remembering back from our slides from earlier, why do I want to give things specific names? What's that going to help me with? I guess I should say, you know, what's it going to help me with when I start adding in my CSS? Yes, it is definitely, it's going to keep it organized. It's definitely going to keep it organized. And organization is so key when you are creating a website. But also, and you're going, yes, exactly, Kate. You're going to know it's going to look the same. That's right. So I'm going to be able to target and change specific parts of my page. So I can target, you know, this H1 headline by putting in a CSS selector that's called head text, and I'm just going to target this area. Or I can target just this unordered list to, okay, great, to change just my navigation. Okay, so let's look at next. Let's look at our main area, and we'll open that up a little bit. And there's something I want to add in to my main section. I want to add in, just so you guys can see, a separate unordered list. So there's 2 ways I can do this. With the main section open, like the little arrow open, so you can see the H2 and the P tag, I want you to hit the plus sign and insert after. And it's going to automatically put div, because it does it every single time. But I want you to change it to unordered list, so UL, and hit enter. And it's going to give you your first list item right over here in our live view. So after you, Case, let me know when you add in that UL element, and just type OK in the chat so I know that you've added it in. So your unordered list, yep, no, not a child, just insert after when you have the P selected. Okay, so with that unordered list selected in your DOM panel, go over into your live screen and double click until you get that orange box that shows up. And we're going to type in some bullet points. They can pretty much be anything that you want to type in. I'm going to type in different animals. So I'm going to say dog, and I'm going to hit enter, and that'll add the next bullet point. Then I'm going to say cat. Then I'm going to say iguana. Then I'm going to say bird, and hit enter, fish. All right, so I added in 5 list items, which you can see it added all the code in over here. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to show you when we change the bullet points in our navigation, that because we target just that navigation, it won't change the bullet points down here. Basically what's the point of doing this. Okay, so now we can go back to naming our different sections. So for my main section, I'm going to double click over to the side, and I'm going to give it an ID called main content. So I'm going to do hashtag. This is going to be important. Lowercase main, capital C, content. Now, why is that important? The way paying attention to how I type that. With just the one capital. Remember when I was showing you how when you're typing in the selectors, that you gotta make sure that they match? Capital M and a capital C would be different, because when I make my selector, I have to be aware where my capital letters are, because it matters when I make my selectors later on, how I name things. Let me save this. This is getting grayed out for some reason. Hold on. Come on. Hold on one second. I just need to save my file and close it. I can already tell something weird's going to happen. See how it's a different gray right here? I can just close my file and start over. Oh, wait. And if anything like that happens to you where things start to gray out, and I don't know if you noticed, like my properties panel was going a little bit bonkers, make sure you save. Just close out your file and then open your file back up again. I'm in the new version of CC 2017, and I feel like whenever Adobe does a huge release like this, things tend to go wrong, So, just gotta, yeah, exactly. So you just kind of gotta roll with the punches, and these things happen. A lot of the time, there's more bugs in their new versions. They haven't really hammered everything out, so just be aware of that. Okay, so I want to name my H2 headline right here. I am going to name this hashtag inline. So hashtag inline for an ID. And I'm going to name my unordered list. So I'm just going to leave my paragraph right here alone. But I'm going to name my unordered list with a class. So period side list. And I'll just hit enter. And that should take care of my naming on my main section. So, Case, let me know when you got those 3 items named on your end. So, and then we'll move on to the aside section. Okay, what did you do wrong with your unordered list? Does it look like bullet points?
Can I just talk real quick?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that'd be easier. Yep.
Okay. It just doesn't look the same as yours. Mine on order list, I have to. Oh, hold on. Maybe I'm wrong.
Does it show the UL and then all of the list items?
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Oh, okay. So
I just closed mine up like this.
okay, but how do I write? It won't let me write on it.
When you double clicked right here, it wouldn't let you?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what was happening to me. Hit save.
Okay.
Close the file. And then just open it back up by double clicking index.
Okay. Close. And then double click the index.
Yep.
Okay. Now I have all these. I have to open them. Okay. So the unordered list.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm there.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's weird. The same exact thing happened with mine.
Okay.
Yeah, they both just decided, I guess, at the same point to be like, nope, not working.
Yeah. What?
All right, so next we're going to move on. So you can kind of close up your main area just to kind of focus on one section at a time. That's what I like to do. Sometimes if they're all open, it's a lot to look at. So I like to keep things kind of closed if I'm not working in that area. So we're going to open up our aside section. And I am going to name this basically what it is or what it's going to be. So I'm going to name it with an ID, and I'm going to call it left sidebar. And I put a, oh, come on, Zoom. And I put a dash in between the word left and the word sidebar. So hashtag left sidebar. For this one. And if I wanted to name all of these paragraphs, see how there's 3 paragraphs in my my aside section? If I want to name them all the same thing, so they will all have the same CSS applied to them, do I name them with a class or do I name them with an ID? Which one can have all the same names? ID. Right, Kate was right on that. All right, so for each of these paragraphs, whoops, hit the right thing. For each of these paragraphs, I am going to name them dot for a class, and I'm going to call them side text. So 1, 2, and you'll notice, like, if you've already typed it once, you can actually select it. 3. So those are all named side text. So Case, you can let me know when you're good. Oh, the drop down on the second one is because I added in a break. So if you look, it's actually this area right here, and I said I put in a tag of BR in my page to add in a line break. So it shows the line break where I've added it in. Yeah, it is pretty cool because you can see, if you're like, I know one of my paragraphs had a break in it, which one is it? You can kind of go through and say, oh, it's right there, instead of having to, really look at the code, which is good. Okay, case is good. All right, so all we have left to name now is our footer. So we're going to name this one with an ID. So we're going to call it hashtag footer. I know, very weird name. Hit enter. And that pretty much should be good. Just trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to name. Actually, you know what? And where it says strong right here, no, just leave it. Never mind. That's going to just get a little bit crazy. Okay. So we've only got about 10 more minutes left to this live session. So I think what we should probably do is, we'll focus our second live session today, adding in those CSS selectors. And I would rather not get 1/8 of the way doing that and then we stop. So why don't we add in why don't we pick a font for this site and we can add it in to the site, because that's one of the things that you're going to need to do for your midterm. So it is very, very, very easy to add a font in Dreamweaver, as long as they didn't move it on me. Let me just All right, good. Still in the same spot. All right, if you go up into Tools and Manage Fonts, it actually opens up the Adobe Web Fonts right within Dreamweaver, which is so much easier than navigating to the website and then navigating back into Photoshop. It actually takes care of it all for you right within Dreamweaver. So whatever font you would like to pick is fine. We're going to download 2 fonts. One font should be kind of a display font, and then the second font, I will tell you which font to use. So whichever decorative font, I guess they're called decorative fonts, I call them display fonts. Whatever decorative font you want to pick, you can pick. And then I'll show you the sans serif font that I am going to pick, which will be our main body text. So let me pick a display font. I'm going to pick this Frederica the Great, I guess. And next, if you go into the sans serif, you can actually search for a font. Search for Source Sans Pro. If you just type in Source, it'll come up. It's like the first one there. And click on that as well. And then click Done. And what it's going to do is it's going to actually add those fonts into your web page for you. And if you want to check and make sure that it has added them in, you can go into your Applications folder, go to Dreamweaver CC, go to Configuration. I got to remember where this is. Font. And they should be in there. All right, Source Sans Pro is in there, and I might need to add the other one again. Tool, Manage Font. What did I want? Frederica or something? Fred. Oh, and if it has a blue dash, it's added it. And then just hit Done. So it must have added it. It's a quick way for me to figure this out. Just going to double check real quick. Fine. All right. If the way to tell also if they've been added is if you go into, any of your selectors, basically, like we only added a body selector last time. So if you click on in your CSS designer up here in the panel, click on your CSS file and then click on the body selector and navigate over. You're going to have to unclick Show Set, navigate over to the text portion, and font family, just click in that box. If you look down at the bottom, Frederica, which was the font that I chose, and the Source Sans Pro, they're both there. So that's how I know that that font was added. So that's just a quick way to show that the font has been added to the page. All right. We have about 10 more minutes, give or take, maybe 7 minutes. So what I want you to do is if you were working along, you can just save this index.html file and you can actually close it out.
Okay, I just lost something.
Yep.
I just lost like everything. It just says filter, CSS rules, and body. How do I get back to that thing that you were just showing?
In the CSS designer?
Yeah.
All right. If you click on week 1, body, did it just show this?
Oh, where are you? Yeah, just body and then wrapper footer.
There's a wrapper and a footer selector?
It's what it said with the hashtags.
It must have added those in. All right. You can just manually delete them by hitting the minus button because we haven't added those yet. I wonder, you know what? It might have been in the file that I uploaded. Hold on. Let me double check.
Okay, but still,
Nope.
how do
I? If you click on body, or if you click make sure your week 1 CSS is your source. That's selected.
Okay.
And then down here in selectors, if it's added in a footer and a wrapper, what you can do, I'll show you. Is it that?
Yeah.
Okay, you can get rid of that by just selecting it and hit the minus button.
Okay. But how do I get back into that panel?
Over here?
Yeah.
Okay, unclick this show set, and then you should have all your options.
I don't even have the show set.
Oh, is the panel not showing up?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What you need to do is open up, see right here, make this part wider until it shows. Does it look like this right now?
Oh, there we go. Properties are back.
Okay, yep. Yeah, you got to just kind of drag it. If it gets too
I'm sorry.
skinny over here, no, you're good. Believe me, because when I reset up my whole thing, it was gone and I couldn't remember how to fix it before because it had just been set up that way for so long. So no worries, you're good.
What did you show us to do there?
What I was showing you is if you clicked on the body and then you clicked on the T for text, you can double check that those fonts that you added are showing up.
I don't see the T for text.
That's where you have to unclick show set.
Okay. Okay, and then T for text.
Yep. Click where it says font family. Just click that box. And those 2 fonts that you added should be right there.
Okay.
Are they there?
No.
Did you add them?
I thought I did.
Okay, if you go to, all right, let's do it again. Tools. Manage fonts. And then search for Source Sans Pro.
Yes.
And you got to click, so there's the blue check mark there. And then hit done. You can just hit done. And then the other one I added was Frederica. It kind of looks like a drawn font. And make sure that there's a blue check mark.
So
you have to click on it to get the blue check mark.
Yeah, but it just says default font.
Oh, yeah. It's going to say default font until you click.
Oh, I see it. Sans Pro, right? Source Pro?
Yep.
Okay, got it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. It's a little weird the first time. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. We're good.
Okay. All right, so let's close out that index.html file. You might have to save it. And we're just going to quickly take a look at the midterm files. All right. Because this can get a little bit confusing. So if you want to work along with me and download those files, and we're probably going to go a couple of minutes over to do this, and I do apologize.
I'm sorry.
You would download the exam file by clicking here, basically, or you can just watch along at this point. It's really up to you. And I'll go over this more in the second live session. So when you download it, you'll have APP 242 midterm exam.zip. And when you unzip, double click on your exam folder, you're going to have all of these items that are in there. So what is going on basically is there's a PSD file that has a whole ton of images. I don't need to save that. What might be helpful to you might be to open that up in Photoshop and then open up your, where is it? Libraries, mainly your CC library, there we go, and create a new library and name it midterm. Then all you need to do is drag each layer individually into this library. You just gotta drag it on top and it adds it right to the library. So you just click layer by layer by layer. Whoops, didn't mean to open it. Not open the layer.
Where do you get the midterm from?
What?
Where do you get the midterm file from?
The midterm exam is in the assignments.
Oh, in the assignments. Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, so you'll add all of those files into this library. Then you can even open up this trophy image. Whoops. My PNGs are set to open up for some reason in preview, so I have to manually drag them into Photoshop, which is pain, and drag that into the same library. It's gonna drag in as layer 0 probably, so you're going to have to rename it trophy.png so you know what it is inside of your library. All right, so this should be your first step, is adding in all of these images to your library. Also, there are very, very detailed instructions as to what you need to do. You know, and I'm going to go over this a little bit more in the second live session, but take note, the midterm will probably, it says it should take you 2 to 3 hours to complete. If this is your first time doing this, expect it might take you like twice as long as that. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to, like, you know, be realistic. If you've never done this before, it might take you, you know, twice as long. So really make sure you're allotting yourself enough time. Don't start the midterm Saturday at 2 in the afternoon, basically. And the instructions are not a step-by-step on how you will create the page. So you're going to have to complete this exam with basically what we are going over in the live sessions. Oh, no problem for the heads up. You know, believe me, I understand how much work there is in this course, and you know, I'm not trying to scare you. It's just that the reason I see people fail this course is because they did not allot enough time to do the assignments, because you know, this is tough. Yeah, this is tough if it's the first time that you've done this. You know, it's all new, so it's going to take you a little bit longer. So you know, I try to be as realistic as possible, and that's why I try to make those little, you know, schedules for you guys too. Is you know, it keeps you from getting overwhelmed, you know, trying to get everything done on Saturday. You know, some courses you really can get everything done on Saturday. I know that. You know, I mean, I've gone online taking 9 online classes, and all of my homework was due on Saturday too. So I understand how it goes. So the first thing that you will do, read the instructions, read them all the way through. It's going to tell you exactly what you need to do. Each thing, step by step, by step, by step, by step. All of these things will need to be done. You are going to need to create a new site. Remember how we keep saying site, new site? That's why I kept, basically harping on that point. So at this point, you have all of your images in a library. That is going to help you in Dreamweaver, because otherwise, if you wanted to use one of these background images, you would have to separate this file into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different files and save them all individually. It's so much, think of how long that would take you to do. It's so much easier to just drag them all in a library and be done. So, go into Dreamweaver, go up into Site. Hold on. You're not going to need to do this. I just need to do, oh no, I'm actually good. Never mind. Site, new site, and you're going to name this, you should really probably name it midterm your name. So I'm going to name it midterm S. McNamara. Then you're going to browse for your midterm exam, and you're going to select that unzipped file that you downloaded. Click choose. Under advanced settings, you're going to click on local info, and you're going to browse for that images folder and click choose, and then you're going to hit save. And you'll notice that it shows you a midterm exam root folder and a midterm exam working files folder. Just open up the midterm exam root folder, and you can see there's an HTML file already in there for you, but then there's also a midterm CSS file. So what you want to do is you want to double click on that midterm exam, add CSS to the HTML file, and you can see that all of the HTML has been done for you. And what does it mimic? It completely mimics the setup we've been doing so far in this class. So then you'll go over into CSS Designer, and there's already, there we go. There's already a CSS sheet in there. You just need to attach it and add in those CSS selectors. So you're going to go into CSS Designer. You're going to click right here to add a new source, and you want to attach an existing CSS file. It's going to open up this dialog box. You're going to hit Browse, and just locate that midterm_CSS.css file. Select it, and hit Open, and then hit OK. You'll notice, though, there aren't any, if we look at the code, there aren't any selectors in there yet. That's where you're going to start adding in your CSS selectors. You don't need to, one of the things you don't need to do, you do not need to do anything with the HTML in this midterm. That's one of the things that you do not need to do. So that's how you set up this site. And as soon as you set it up, do a file, save all, basically. And in your files folder, if you close out of your site or anything else, you'll probably see your week 1 site, and then you'll see your midterm site in there. And all you have to do is double click to open up that file to start working on it again. So we're a little bit over our time, but for our second live session today, we're going to continue adding, we're actually going to begin adding adding CSS selectors to this index.html page that we were working on. The CSS selectors that we will be adding will mimic what we need to do in our midterm this week. So if you can come to the second live session, it's going to be in about 2 hours. I think, and you have these files ready to go, this would probably be one of the live sessions that you would really want to work along with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the files that we have created today in this first live session, and I'm going to put them as an announcement. So all you need to do is download them if you do choose to work along in the second live session for today. So I really thank everybody for staying a little bit extra today and for dealing with my problems with my Zoom account. The problem was hopefully more on my end than yours. But if you can make it to our second live session, I really suggest it. I think that will probably, really help you with our midterm. If you can't, that's okay. Just make sure that you watch the live session and that you work along with it. Does anybody have any questions before we take off from our first one? No. Case says no. Case says no. And Al says no. All right. Well, great. I hope I can see you guys later. If not, no problem. Just make sure that you, oh, great. Dallas will be there. Oh, looks like everybody's going to be there. Awesome. That is awesome news to my ears. All right. I will see you all in about 2 hours. All right. Have a great 2-hour break.